how hard was it for you? And we see it in the documentary a little bit. How hard was it for you to get comfortable with all the cameras there and the ropes and the sounds and people around you doing lots of things that are based off of what you're doing? So whatever you do, there's kind of a reaction and an interaction.
So all the vertical filming wasn't that big of a change for me because as a professional climber, I've just filmed on walls before. Though I mean the scale and the magnitude of what we were doing was a little bit more, but ultimately it's not that much different than just being on a wall normally. Because there are always other climbers and people around and like people hanging with ropes and stuff happening, so I'm sort of used to that on the wall. I think the bigger challenge for me was shooting with my girlfriend in the van and just, basically the verite filmmaking on the ground, just because that was so much more, it was a bigger part of my life than I'd ever really done before. And so, I think that was the challenge.
Yeah, and those moments are really moving. Chai, last night I saw you guys doing a Q&A, and I think Jimmy had said that this started as like a profile that you were going to do of Alex. At what point did you realize that you had potentially a feature film story?
Well, we were always thinking like making a feature film on Alex, it goes back to that anecdote of Alex where, like, as a kid, it's always weird to talk about him when he's right next to you. As a kid, it was scarier for him to talk to somebody else and ask them to be his partner than to go out there by himself and hence climb with no ropes.
Now look at him, he's doing press.
I know. I mean, yeah.
Well, honestly, though, it does just go to show with enough practice, you can sort of work through things. And I mean, when you think that, 15 years ago I was afraid to talk to strangers, and now I'm holding this microphone and chatting. With enough practice, you can get over some things.
On a 3,000-foot wall without a rope.
Honestly, that's...
Yeah, and I just felt like, I think we both felt that everyone's been there. Everyone has that type of fear in your life. And here's a wonderful story, inspiring story, an outrageous story of that, geeky little kid who then goes on to free solo El Cap. And so we always thought that the film had a more universal potential. Like the climb is about something more than just the climb. Yeah.
One of the stories that ends up happening, you reference it, is you meet this woman. She becomes your girlfriend, and she becomes extremely attached to you, as a girlfriend does, and
and me attached to her as well.
You attached to her, but you're still training for El Capitan, and you're still gonna solo it. What was it like filming those intimate moments where it's clearly becoming difficult for her that you're gonna do this thing that is risking your life, and she's falling for you?
I think that was for sure the hardest things to film through this whole process. I'm not particularly good at talking about my feelings to begin with, let alone.
So it becomes part of the movie in a wonderful way,
or in a terrible way, depending on.
For you,
for me,
fun
it's
for us,
watch.
the audience.
Yeah, fun for you. But yeah, I think that it's hard enough for me to express myself with her one-on-one. When there's somebody else watching you and listening, it's like even harder to have those conversations. But in some ways, I think it's kind of good for the relationship. It puts a little extra strain. It makes you work through some things, and it kind of makes you stronger for it.
I noticed in some of those conversations, and this just could be me reading into it, is that you have to kind of, and I think someone even says this in the film. Your friend says this: you have to kind of put up a wall so you can continue doing this thing that you've set out to do. Did you find yourself releasing or coming out from behind that wall as you were working towards this? And did you find that you had to continue to hide behind it so you could continue climbing?
I don't know, you take it.
No,
I don't know.
this is your question.
Well, I know, but I don't know. No, let's hear
opinions about it.
Let's hear her opinion. No, let's hear your opinion first. I don't have anything good to say.
I think it's quite similar to what we were experiencing filming, where, Alex was about to do this thing that's very fragile and delicate and terrifying. And he does not need us to put the energy out in the world that we're stressed or we're scared and we don't want him to do, any of that. And I think probably the same goes for, for Sani, where just to give that, like, of course she was gonna have these feelings, but to have him feel it was something that we didn't want him to have to carry our feelings.
Like there's no way to stop him, so why make him more neurotic about it?
Yeah, we're not gonna add to the burden. And it was kind of, everyone had to just put up a little bit of a wall.
Yeah, and as you see in the film, that Sani realized that as well, which is why she sort of left Yosemite, the week before I was going to do her, a few days before. I was like, basically when I was pretty much ready to do the free solo, she just went home and hung out for a bit to make sure that I had the space to sort of process at my own speed.
Well, there's a conversation between the two of you where she essentially asks, will there ever be a point where you feel dedicated enough to something to not solo? And you very bluntly just say no. And I thought that was, I watched that and I was like, this is a person who still has something that they have to accomplish and can't have this conversation.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Because now I watch that and I'm like, oh, that's a little too callous, and that, that comes off as unkind.
I understand. I mean, I think the audience, I felt like the audience understood it and didn't think that it was,
I don't know. I just see it and I'm like, oh no.
I love you. I'm sorry.
But the thing is, I mean, I'd been dreaming about free soloing El Cap for 8 years, or maybe 7 years at that point. And it was like one of the most important things in my life. And at that time, it was a relatively new relationship with this woman, Sani, who I was really into. But you're like, oh, it's a new relationship, as opposed to this life dream that I've held for most of my adult life. And so, clearly the free solo is coming first. Now, having done this climb and still having, this good relationship with Sani, like many years later, I'm like, oh, the balance changes a little bit. But, time will tell.